Hey everybody, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com and the Goat Film Reviews YouTube channel, and I've got my quick thoughts, my quick first reaction to the new film American Fiction. I believe the director's name is Jefferson, and the film features, I would say, a famous writer, but not like a Stephen King level famous. I'm talking about like a literary writer who is probably famous within the circles. People know who he is, but not on the upper tier. And he basically is looking for a publisher for his newest book, but because he is black, he is being asked to do books that are more about, I guess, more about what black people have been unfortunately associated with. You know, they're asking him to do books on, gang life, and books on slavery, and books on oppression, and books on police brutality, and he wants to just tell stories about people, and that's the frustrating thing for him as a character, is that he wants to just be an author who happens to be black. He doesn't want to have to constantly associate his blackness with what's being expected of him, I guess, which I found to be a very fascinating idea, because there's often been that joke in Hollywood that if you're black and you want to get an Oscar, you've got to do a revolutionary, or you've got to do a slave story, or you've got to like do one of those kinds of tales instead of just being a good actor. It's almost like you have to make blackness part of your role in order to get an Oscar nom. And so Jefferson as a director is really channeling that in the film, to the point where the main character writes an explicitly almost self-loathing black novel that is about like the black experience of being in a gang and being gunned down by police, and I think that's interesting, is that he writes that book almost as a throwaway to kind of like give people what they want, right? And then that book becomes famous. And so I really like it's not so much satire, but I guess the attitude at which Cord comes across this film, and in which the lead actor also be able to imbue within the narrative. It's an interesting film, and I think coming at it from my perspective, I've always, I've watched. I'm a writer. I went to school for English. So much of this film is about the English writer's perspective in a lot of ways, and I think that's where I came at it. Was almost like, give the people what they want and you'll become famous, but you may be giving up your soul as an author in the process. And I appreciated that about the film. It was certainly a scathing, funny look at, unfortunately, certain times in which we live in, where it is not so easy to just be a person in your career, but also be black separately. Where it's almost like in order to move in your career as a black person, your blackness has to be a part of that. And I find that very fascinating, because again, it comes back to that Shoes movie idea that I don't know what it's like to be black in America. I've never known what it's like to be black in America. But to watch this movie for 2 hours, I get the sense of how this author feels about the way he's interpreted in America. So it's a really interesting film. I was taken with it. I thought a number of the main cast performances were really fun. The film also really harkens into the familialness, too, of, everyone around him has expectations for what he should be, and he has expectations for what everyone else should be. And he's got a lot of anger in his past because, his father committed suicide, and it's that all this crushing weight of everything that's expected of him kind of coming down on him, and maybe whether or not that's warranted or not, because he is successful, but maybe not as successful as he wants to be. And so there's a lot of layers to the film, and there's a lot to unpack, and there's a lot jammed into this 2 hours. But I mostly enjoyed it. I was really taken with the main character and his struggles, and him trying to be the best man he can be for what he wants to get out of life, but also make those sacrifices for the people he cares about. And I love movies that I could never make, because I could never tell this story, because I've never lived this experience. That's what I find so fascinating about the narrative, and it's what I really liked about the movie. I don't know that this film will make my top 10, but gosh, it's right near that. It's right near that level where I want to include it on my top 10 films of the year list. But as we get closer to, I'm not sure. There's just a lot more films that I have to catch before the end of the year. But I really, really liked American Fiction. And without a doubt, if it doesn't make my top 10 of the year, it will be in my honorable mentions list, without a doubt. I really enjoyed this movie. It doesn't have it's coming out in New York and LA soon, and then they're waiting until January to potentially have some larger distribution. But keep an eye out for American Fiction when it becomes available, because I'm really excited to share this film with more people. It was a lot of fun, but really satirical fun, really self-aggrandizing fun, really kind of dark humor in a way too, where what the characters are dealing with is not something they want to, I'm so interested in how this film will be perceived, because it's kind of hitting against modern criticism as well. And that's what I think is funny, is that, I as a person who gives a lot of criticism, I'm willing to shake the stick back at myself and say that, it's a kind of a silly existence to be a critic and to be talking about films in such a way. But man, this movie has just so many ideas packed into it. And it's also just a really good family story filled with solid performances. I really enjoyed this one. I think the screenplay is probably my favorite element of the film, and I think you should definitely check it out when it becomes available. It's going to have a limited release run, hopefully opening up into something larger. And then it was released by Orion, Amazon, MGM. So hopefully we'll see it streaming sometime sooner rather than later as well, and so the accessibility of the film can be a little bit broader. So let me know what you thought about American Fiction once you've seen it down in the comment section below. While you're down there, please like and subscribe. There are 2 free things you can do that help to support the channel immensely, and you never miss new episodes of the show as they drop. You can also find Goat Film Reviews on Facebook. You can follow me personally at Almighty Goatman on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and Threads. And you can find my show, Kyle and Nick on Film, that I co-host with Nick Plotachuk from the St. Paul Filmcast. We have new episodes of that show every single week. All those links, they're down in the description, and we'll see you next time.